Are you frustrated that no one is coming to look at your house? Maybe it's been on the market for months and you had some activity at the beginning of the listing, but now it seems like all of the buyers have gone away or chosen something else. In this video, I'm going to walk you through what the actual problem is to help diagnose why no one is knocking on your front door and how we can actually get your house sold for top dollar. So let's get into it. The first thing that I hear all the time is we need more marketing. Now, most of the time, this is the easy scapegoat. We look online and we go, maybe if my pictures were a little bit better, or maybe if we had more open houses this weekend, that would do the trick. And this is something that sellers will say all the time because they want to make sure there's activity that's going on. But the problem is that this activity is just that. It's activity and it's not progress. So what we want to create is actual progress that brings people to your front door and ends up with offers in your hand. The problem with more open houses is that you're just inviting people through the door that aren't actually qualified to buy the house. If someone's coming through an open house, that means that they're not shopping with an agent, they're likely not pre-approved, and they're not actually capable of purchasing your home. So what we really want to see are pre-approved buyers who are showing up with agents and actually setting appointments because they're serious about purchasing your home. The other thing I hear all the time was, maybe if we changed a picture, or maybe if we staged this room a little bit different. But the reality is your agent probably has a great system for all of those things. If you're listed with a great real estate agent, that means that they have a go-to photographer, they have a stager they've worked with for a long time, and they're probably really competent at marketing your house. So it's really easy to point fingers and say marketing is the problem when it comes to selling my house, but the reality is there's just not enough potential buyers walking through the door. So the question becomes, how do we change that? Because it is really frustrating to have your house sit on the market for months without anyone willing to pull a trigger. So the next thing that I hear all the time that might be the solution is, hey, let's offer them a credit. Maybe we can offer them a credit for their closing costs, or maybe the carpet's a little bit dated, so let's offer them a credit for new carpet. Or right now, buy downs are a really popular credit to offer. Hey, maybe if we give them a 2-1 buy down, they'll be willing to purchase the house. The problem with all of these is that the buyers know that they can get those credits already. The way that they're shopping, they know that if they ask for closing costs in a maybe balanced or not great market, or if they ask for the carpet to be replaced, there's still a good chance that a seller's going to be okay with that. And even if you advertise it on your listing, it doesn't help move the needle. So really, that's just another band-aid to cover the problem. The third thing sellers resort to is making really expensive upgrades. Now, it might be really attractive to go, hey, I think I can put a new kitchen in here, or maybe if I replace these old countertops with brand new quartz countertops, that a buyer's going to pay top dollar for my house. And the reality of this situation is that a buyer's going to do that anyway. When they move into your house, they're going to customize things and personalize them to their liking, and they're planning on investing money into your home once they move in. So if you decide to spend $10,000 on the front end, don't expect to get that back. There are lots of upgrades that you can do that will actually help support value and bring a buyer. And if you want to know what those are and how to choose those upgrades, follow the link down below and it'll take you to our Prep for Profit quiz, where you can actually figure out how much you should spend and what you should invest in to get your house ready to sell. Now let's talk about the solution. And this is where we have to see your home through a buyer's eyes. When you purchased your home, you may have looked at 10, 15 different houses and decided which one was the best fit for your family. Today's buyers are really similar to that, but there's a few things that they might do differently. And the first is the way they compare your house to others. They actually have the information at their fingertips at all times and can compare your house to other houses on the market instantly. If you go back 15 or 20 years, or even the beginning of my career, it took a lot longer for buyers to actually discover where value lied. And they'd actually have to come to me and ask, Derek, what do you feel about the value of this house? Today, they come to me and say, hey, AI told me that it's probably worth this much, or the dollar per square foot seems a little bit high, or they have notifications on Zillow that say these 3 houses are priced a little bit better. They're flooded with information today, and they're making judgments based on what their phone is telling them. Now, I can combat that to the best of my ability. You can combat that to the best of your ability, but the problem is that it's not going away. So their belief about your house is being run through a filter of technology and information overload. They see all of the houses that are for sale in a given period, and they're making instant judgments about which ones provide the best value. So if your house, when lined up to a different house, is not as valuable, or the price might be a little bit higher, they are choosing the other house. And the way that we measure this is by the number of showings that we're seeing on a weekly basis. What we want to see when we list a house is 3 to 5 showings per week. Now, if you're not getting that, that's a problem. You should be seeing 3 to 5 showings a week from potential buyers, and you should also be seeing them come back. You should have a couple second showings mixed in there with buyers that are seriously considering your listing. If you're not seeing that level of activity, it just means that something's wrong. And most of the time, and I would say 99% of the time, this comes down to value. And we're not just talking price, we're talking value, because buyers are valuing different listings more than they're valuing yours. And when a buyer sees value, the first thing that they do is set up a private showing to come look at your house. They're not coming to an open house. They're not just going to happen to drive by. They are going to contact a real estate agent, and they're going to come at a set time with intention to potentially purchase your house. So if you're only seeing 1 or 2 of those a week, not 3 to 5, that means that you're probably about 5% off on price. If you're not seeing any showings, if you're not having the 1 to 2, that means you're probably 10% or more off on price. And so what we want to do is every week we want to take inventory of how many people actually came through the door that might be well qualified buyers. And if we're not having 3 to 5 people come through the door, there's usually only one reason, and that is value. So when we talk about value, it goes all the way back to the beginning of our listing conversation, and when we talk about our pricing strategy. Now, there's a couple different ways to price a house, and your agent should go through all of these with you to really outline how to actually value your home. The first thing that you should look at is what I call the 5-5-5. Now, we want to look at 5 active listings, 5 pendings, and 5 solds to determine how your home stacks up against the competition. The first 5 that we're going to look at are active. Now, these are the houses that are on the market that you're going to be competing with. They may not be exactly the same when it comes to bedrooms or bathrooms or square footage, but they're going to be very similar. And we want to know what else a buyer might look at that could be considered competition. The second group with the pendings tells us what's selling right now. These are houses that just went under contract in the last couple of weeks, so we can see how big those houses are, what their dollar per square foot is going for, and how it actually compares when we talk about features and finishes and things that a buyer might judge against your home. And then third is going to be sold properties. This gives us the evidence of the past. What has happened in the last 6 months or a year that can prove a home sale in your neighborhood. Now, in good markets, we can use the solds to determine what might happen next in terms of the value going up. And in a bad market, or a market that has increasing inventory, we look at those solds and go, maybe it's going to sell for a little bit less than these over the next 6 months. So our positioning in terms of our starting price has to be relative to that 5-5-5. The next thing we're going to look at is appreciation. We want to know from the time that you purchased your house, how much has the real estate market in your area appreciated? Now, this is a wrestling match I get into all the time with sellers, because I hear things like, well, I did a lot of work to my house. Well, I made all of these upgrades and it's way nicer than it was. And to them, I say, that's awesome. And that's going to help sell your house. But our job here is to position it based on what the market thinks. And if we can take that appreciation and determine where we should stand today, then all of your upgrades and extra features that you've added should have a return on investment on top of what that number is. But that doesn't mean that we overprice it, because the buyers are going to look at it and go, why is that house worth a little bit more? I can't tell. We want them to go, wow, that looks like a great deal. And then on the backside go, yes, I'm willing to pay more for that house. So we want to see how much has your house appreciated since you purchased it. And if you don't know exactly what that looks like, you can actually just use a rule of thumb. The real estate market nationally appreciates about 4% each year. So if you take 4% and compound that over however long you've owned your home, that's probably where it should fall, or at least a rough estimate of how much it's appreciated since you purchased it. The last thing we're going to do is look at the months of inventory in your neighborhood. Now, this is really helpful when it comes to small discrepancies in price, because we have to choose which price band to list your house at so that it has the most activity and the greatest chance of selling. And what that means is that however many houses are on the market in any given time, we want to find out how long it would take for all of the current buyers to purchase all of those houses. And that gives us the months of inventory. That tells us how fast the market's moving. So let's say that we have a house that we think is about $615,000. But when we look at the months of inventory, we notice that from $500 to $600, $600,000, there's only 1 month of inventory. That's a really strong seller's market. But then from $600,000 to $700,000, there's 6 months of inventory. Now that is a balanced market that's moving in the direction of a buyer's market. And what that tells us is that it might be wise to price our house in the $500,000 to $600,000 bracket because there are far more buyers and there's way less inventory. We create this supply and demand relationship that's really, really beneficial when it comes to selling your house. So if you haven't looked at the months of inventory or the price brackets where you're listed, I would highly recommend doing that. So here's the moral of the story. The problem is probably not your open houses. It's probably not your pictures. It's probably value. And if you want to figure out how to strategically price your house and prep for success, follow the link below the video and it'll take you to our listing launch book, which will show you a step-by-step guide of how to get your house ready, how to price your house, and how to sell it for top dollar. And if you found this valuable, please share it, like, comment, and subscribe for more real estate tips and tricks.